everybody. Welcome back to the top of the hour. We are plugging right away with Taxation is Theft Fest 2020. I hope you're enjoying it. I know watching the activity online has been exciting. A lot of folks tuning in to the live feed. Also knowing that these videos will be available for future review is huge because we've had so much good information. Again, you guys have had enough of my face today, so I'm not going to take up much more of the screen time. Our next guest is a gentleman who came to us, or I should say came to me with no bio. So I guess I've had other speakers that had bios today. Josh, I don't have a bio for you. So I guess that means you are a man with who does not need an introduction. Mr. Dial, I want to welcome you to Taxation is Theft Fest 2020.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for joining us. Again, these guys have seen me all night. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and just turn the screen over to you. I will still be available and accessible. So if you need something, you holler. But in the meantime, the floor is yours.
All righty. Well, thank you. So my name is Joshua Dial. I was featured in the Netflix series Tiger King, and I was Joe Exotic's campaign manager. And tonight I wanted to talk to folks because there's a lot of folks out there that are, that are really tuned in to Tiger King, and they're wondering what a libertarian is. And, Joe just was not a libertarian. And to kind of back up what I'm saying, so it's just not all conjecture or hearsay, I've actually got some authentic remaining campaign material here. And I'm just going to go through some of this stuff because apart from, the NAP violation, which I will get into, there's a ton of stuff on here, big government, big time spending kind of stuff. And I think that, and this is in no way me shitting on Joe or trying to gain notoriety or anything off of this. But I think people have a right to know. People are out there getting this guy's likeness tattooed on their bodies for the rest of their lives. And I think these people should know exactly who they're dealing with before they make that decision. So I'm going to go through this stuff. But first and foremost, let's just address the elephant in the room. And that is how can you be a libertarian if you violate the non-aggression principle? Joe Exotic was not a libertarian because he did not believe in the non-aggression principle. It was something that he decided not to sign. It was something he did not agree with. And he violated the spirit of it. If nothing else, by collaborating to have a woman killed. That's not who we are as libertarians. That's not how we solve problems. Violence should always be the last answer. But also, there's the animal cruelty charges. Let's not forget that in all of this, though Carol Baskin may have killed her husband, he still did a lot of damage to a lot of animals, and awful deaths, awful lives that they lived. And one has to ask themselves, is aggression towards animals a violation of the non-aggression principle? I think it's something that we as libertarians should talk about and discuss. I'm not, I don't feel that it is in my personal view, but I can totally see how everyone else can. And I think aggression in general, I just have a hard problem taking anything other than a biblical view of animals, though I am an atheist, I will say. And I find it hard to put someone in a cage for the way they treat a non-sentient creature. But anyways, that besides, I'm just going to get on to some of this good stuff here. And some of this is libertarian stuff, so don't get me wrong. For instance, we have bettering our schools and getting politics out of actually, this is a misprint. No shit, not a misprint. So let me just give you some background. This is the stuff that we printed and handed out. Joe made all this. He typed up all this. I was able to get some input into some of it. And it's just ridiculous. You just really have to see it to believe it. And on the back is what he wants to fight against. But we have bettering our schools, getting politics out, whatever. I guess when I say it in a different tone, it does make a little bit better sense. Bettering teacher pay, finding our lottery money. So here's our first roadblock here. This was something that was sent out to every libertarian in Oklahoma. And yet, alarming 664%, or not percent, I'm sorry, 664 people did vote for Joe with this knowledge. He was for raising taxes in order to get teachers a pay raise. This is something that, as libertarians, we cannot allow our candidates to get away with. We are not the party of more taxes and more spending. And this is just one of many. We'll just go on because there's so many. The legalizing marijuana, supporting rural fire and EMS. Once again, he was for taxes and using tax money to support these particular establishments. Pro-choice, reforming food stamps, and reforming the DHS. Those actually sound very normal. But then you go into the next thing, and it says raising GPT. And what that is here in Oklahoma, well, that's anywhere, but gross production tax is what it stands for, GPT. In Oklahoma, we make all our money off of oil. And Joe decided that he wanted to raise taxes on oil and use that oil money to pay for teacher pay, for instance, and some of these reforms that he wanted to do. Giving your rights back, so vague, but he got away with it. Right to farm, lifting regulations. Right to farm was something that was going around in Oklahoma at the time that did not pass. Life, liberty, and own private property. So there's some very libertarian things snuck in here, but then you go to fixing our neighborhoods. Very vague, but so unless you talk to Joe himself, you wouldn't know what that meant. Joe was a very racist guy. There's a lot of my colleagues who really don't have any hate towards Joe. They weren't featured in the documentary, but I'm not going to call them out by name. But if need be, they'll come forward. And they were African American, and there were many instances where we were in the limo. They were camera guys. We were in the limo going to different events. And he would say the most outrageous and racist things you can possibly imagine a political candidate ever uttering. It was horrendous. So his idea of fixing our neighborhoods was something akin to stop and frisk from New York City. This is I stop on some of these things because these are even extreme for Republicans and Democrats in some cases. Some of this stuff is just so outlandish that you have a hard time believing that he was ever allowed to run. Vote yes on State Question 788. That was medical marijuana. And that did pass, but there was a ton of people that were supporting that. Support Marsy's Law. Here's another issue and a very non-libertarian thing. Despite my friends who I will note that do support the law. None of my libertarian friends that I know of. Marsy's Law here in Oklahoma and other states sounds great on paper. What it does is it gives a victim a victim's bill of rights. So, if someone's arrested for a violent crime, just as the offender is read their rights, a victim would be read their own set of rights. But it also had some very dangerous stuff in there for civil liberties and very difficult stuff for folks like me who are not back the blue type kind of folks to do. And then, of course, the last thing, as in any good candidate for office, is protect the right to hunt. So those are the things that he wanted to fight against. And I apologize, that's a bit of a mess, but that's just how it is on paper. Um, and I really think that people should hear this stuff before they go get tattoos of this man. Um, the things that he wanted to fight against were, some libertarian things, but there were some things that were, it would require a nanny state, in no other terms to say. It would require a nanny state to take care of. Government overreach are things we must fight against. Bullying and cyber stalking. That right there, we're going to hit a problem right away. Anyone who's on the internet knows that anything can be taken for bullying. And when you have the internet patrolling the government, that's not a libertarian principle at all. It's not a democratic principle. It's not a Republican principle. It's a fascist principle. And once again, people should know this. Higher taxes, things we must fight against. Higher taxes, political salaries, and benefits. Good things. Doesn't sound so good when on the front page you advocate for raising the taxes, but uh, fighting against misappropriated money, fighting against the robbing of education, mental health, and elderly's money, whatever that means. Permits for you to exercise your constitutional rights. This last thing was in here, and it was the one thing that Joe talked about, and it's something that I want to finish on as far as this pamphlet goes. The one thing that Joe, and I think this is what attracted a lot of libertarians, he was very folksy, and he had a big pair. He always tried to go into the venues with his guns. He open carried, and he went everywhere with his pistols on his hips. And there's something about that the everyday man really admires. And the fact that he would get up there and talk about this really made him relevant on the stage, where he shouldn't have been relevant at all. There were many debates and forums where he was on stage with the sitting lieutenant governor, along with the other two libertarian candidates, and senators, state auditors. There was a massive chance to spread the libertarian message. But as I've kind of talked about here, as far as it goes with Joe Exotic, he held on to the libertarian message only as far as it would get him on the ballot line. He spoke to me himself about how much he hated the Libertarian Party. And I think that most libertarians really know this, but I think that anyone that may be watching this, that wants to know a little bit more about Joe's politics, this is about as much as I've ever talked about it. Yeah, he didn't really have a clear platform. His idea was just to make it into the governor's mansion. He didn't really have a plan beyond that. These were things that he had going all across the state, getting on news channels, news stations, and spreading a message to thousands of people in Oklahoma. So I think that should bring up the topic of, how we get our candidates on the ballot line. I think as long as we're the party of nominating by convention on our presidential ticket, we should maybe look into and have a discussion about the possibility of candidates going through the XCOM of each state, the committee of each state, or even possibly the state convention, in order to get on the ballot line. Now, that may seem a little extreme, and it may not be an option that we choose to exercise every cycle, but I think it should be an option that people consider. There are people that I can certainly see this being used against. Some of my favorite people I like to follow, like Brian Ellison and Vermin Supreme, some of the more outspoken folks. I really like to follow them, if nothing else, for the outrage. And I would be afraid that this would, potentially be used to stop candidates in that respect. So I think that, like I said, it's a conversation we should have. I know here in Oklahoma, we've had that conversation, and we never really came to a conclusion on it. Yes, we came to the conclusion that Joe Exotic is not a libertarian, and we threw him from the party, first by censuring him, and then by formally removing him from the party once he was convicted. But he was never a part of the party. And that's what I really want to bring home to people, and hope that people understand and recognize. With that, if there's anybody that has any questions or anything, I would be happy to take any questions you may have.
Wow, Josh, pretty insightful stuff you're throwing out there, right? It's got to be eye-opening for a lot of folks. I'm one of the very, very few holdouts that is not familiar with the Netflix special. I haven't seen it, and I only know and familiar with Joe Exotic through the memes.
Right.
through the memes. So watching through the chats here, I'm trying to keep an eye on the chat. It looks like a couple people want to shout out. Somebody wants to shout out for the Australian libertarians before we go tonight. So we can,
all right.
Yeah, Josh. So let's give a shout out to the Australian libertarians.
All right. Yeah, definite shout out to the Australian libertarians. Way to go, mate.
That's fantastic. So let's talk a little bit about this, and I guess we can stay on topic because I have my own. What's interesting about libertarian politics and being a libertarian and running for office is what you have is a situation where most states don't have an official nominating process for candidates. Most states, if somebody is registered as a libertarian, if you live in a state that you can register to vote as a libertarian, if they're registered as a libertarian and they sign up to run for a political office, if it's a partisan race, it defaults to your voter registration status. So that's all it takes. We see candidates here in Nebraska kind of manipulate that system where they will jump from one party to the next. They'll change the registration and run, trying to manipulate the system. And I get it. There's a strategy to that. But talk to me a little bit about what you feel like was really, you say Joe's motivation was to get into the governor's office. Was that it? Just it was a power grab, you think, or?
Yeah. Well, go back to Emperor Palpatine for Star Wars. All who gain power are afraid to lose it, even the Jedi. That's everyone's laughing at me right now, I'm sure. But there's many.
I get it. I'm a nerd.
That apply to real life, and that is definitely one of them. He had a taste of power by the cult following he had, and make no mistake, it was a cult. It was absolutely a cult. These people were ready to die for Joe. They were ready to go kill Carol themselves. People professed that themselves. And it was so easy to get caught up in emotion. And I think that he got such a good chunk of that, a good bite of that, that he just kept wanting more and more. But his eventual and real reason for running for governor at the beginning was to prepare himself for a libertarian run for president. Because, we made it about halfway through the campaign, and, we always did online polls. We were big on social media. And that's all we were big on because, we turned out a very low turnout at the end of the day. But we always won the online polls, and he would get a kick out of it and think that we were going to win because he was winning a Facebook poll. And at one point he said, "Josh, what are we going to do if we win, if I win and I'm governor?" And I just told him, I said, "I guess I become shadow governor." And he just said, "Okay," and that's all we really talked about it. But from that point on, about halfway on, he really thought that we had a good chance of winning.
Yeah, he really felt like he had the wherewithal to go all the way to the top, huh?
Yeah, and what I talk about a lot when I almost everywhere I go on politics channels, uh, he had a chance of getting the nomination, and that's scary, and people should take heed of this. Um, had the independents been allowed to vote on the libertarian ticket here in Oklahoma, the Democrats always let independents vote on the Democratic primary ticket. Republicans always vote to keep them out. I've never, in all my time of following Oklahoma politics, have known of that to work in a different way. And the libertarians also have that option, of course. And would they have allowed independents to vote in the primary? It would have flooded our party with people who were not libertarian and did not hold libertarian principles. And I understand that if we're ever going to win a national election, that's important, and we have to have that. But we also want to be careful and make sure that everyone who comes in understands the non-aggression principle and understands there's certain things about libertarianism that you cannot just disagree with. We are all of one mind on this, such things as the non-aggression principle, or we should be. And I think there's a danger in other candidates if we decide, hey, if we let independents in, maybe we get a chance of getting 10, 15% instead of 4 or 5%. Yes, maybe so, but at what cost? So that's a lesson from Oklahoma politics in our first ever libertarian gubernatorial runoff that I think other states should take heed of.
Yeah, you got to be mindful of those types of scenarios.
Yeah.
It looks like somebody here is looking for an update on your GoFundMe. Myra, a good friend of ours. Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, my GoFundMe hit its goal, and it was organized by Jess Mears and Chrissy, and they've been great. I didn't want to up the goal. I think that's enough to be going on with for treatment. I think within the next few months there will be opportunities for me once the states are opening up to go make money on my own and pay for my own care. But in the meantime, I want to thank everybody that did donate to my GoFundMe, or anyone who wants to donate to it anymore. I have been out of work for about a month and a half now. I haven't talked to the public about it because I'm not one of those people that go and post their medical status on Facebook. But I've actually been off work with a stomach ulcer, which has been miserable, absolutely miserable. So, thank goodness that fundraiser was there to help me with some of my expenses. So if anyone would like to donate, that's on my page.
Nice. Viewer Kenny Blevins here from YouTube. He's asking us, what do you feel the odds are of a libertarian getting elected to offices in Oklahoma?
Well, it's already happened in a small capacity, but I'll take any win. We have Chris Powell and Bethany. We have Chad Williams, the chair of the Libertarian Party of Oklahoma. He is also an elected council member for the city of Choctaw, Oklahoma. There's a couple others. Please forgive me, guys. Name slipping. I promise it's not the weed. It's a sativa. I will say Chris Powell. He was the guy who won the nomination, the Libertarian nomination for governor against Joe. And he did go on to run a successful campaign, and he's city council member in Bethany. So it's already happened. All politics is local. That is definitely true in red small states like Oklahoma. So it's already happened, and I look forward to the future. I'm sure that we'll have more come along.
Nice. Colton's asking about your mental well-being. How you feeling mentally?
Thank goodness for State Question 788, which legalized medical marijuana. Is all I got to say. It's such a journey, and I'm doing okay. I'm starting to get used to it. When this first came out, mind you, and everyone watching, when they filmed this, and I filmed these interviews for Netflix, or what was to be the series, I thought that this was going to be an indie film that was only going to be on, maybe a handful of film festivals, maybe 10,000 people at most in the world see it. I did not think that millions and millions of people around the world would watch it. So, you know, um, it took me by surprise, and it shocked me. To this day, I have not watched the docuseries. I have not even watched it. Um, and it's just too much for me, you know? It was a traumatic time. It's still hard to think about. And, the fact that everyone knows me now when I go out, because of this tragedy, people would think, oh, well, what do, famous people want? People who have some sort of fame, I should say, whining about it. You know, this is a lot worse than I ever thought. And I admit I would have been on the side of the people who were saying, oh, well, he's famous. What has he got to complain about? Or, oh, he's got money. What is that to complain about? I once saw a meme that I liked that said, there is not one problem that money would not solve in my life, not one. And that is so not true, guys. Um, you know, anyone that's watching this and that may still hold on to that belief, it is not true. Um, Not at all. In the next couple of hopefully in the next year, I look to stand to hopefully make a decent living, traveling the country, doing tours for this and talking to people, and getting a chance to spread not only the libertarian message, but the message of mental health awareness. Let other people who have PTSD that have not, been in combat, know that they can come out and talk about their PTSD and their illness. That they don't have to go overseas and die, serve in a war in order to be comfortable enough to talk about their PTSD. So, I have a lot of chances to do this. And all that being said, I have a bright future, going forward. And at the same time, all my problems that I had before all this came and all these opportunities came, and the promise of future money and future opportunities came, all my problems are still here. Some of them are even worse now. And if there's anyone out there that truly believes that this is all about money and all you need is money to succeed in life, it's just not true. It's just not.
Yeah, I can't imagine being thrust. I mean, that's the word I'm going to use. Being thrust into the limelight, like you have at this point. I can't even imagine. Again, I don't know what your world was like beforehand, but I don't imagine you were being recognized very very much in public. I don't imagine you were probably getting very much hate mail. I don't, you know what I mean? All the things that I imagine are probably happening to you right now.
Yeah.
I know that you probably have allies, people that are rallying behind you. I hope you have people that are allying with you and rallying behind you. But I'm sure you also have people that are in full on attack mode, calling, which has got to be hard, especially if you have an ounce of self compassion. Of course, yeah. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, there's people have just been downright horrible. Some people, I should say. Most of the people, I would say 95% of the people have been absolutely amazing. I mean, amazing. Like, my inbox is so full of people and forgive me, people, but I have so many messages every day still coming in that I can never get to them all. I mean, I could, completely drop my life and try to run with the whole celebrity thing. But that's not something I really want to pursue. There's, like I said before, some opportunities hopefully coming on the horizon. But that's about it. And I had a fundraiser going, because mind you, I've never got like real professional help for this. It was a problem that festered for a long time. And unless you have had your mental health and your personal life completely shone on, have a national spotlight shone on it, and being thrust in the spotlight, you really don't know uh, how bad that is for someone who already has mental health problems. Um, for a lot of people, I should say. And it's just hard. I don't want to get on Facebook anymore. I don't want to look at my notifications because I don't want to see the awful things people are talking about. I don't want to start a Twitter. I don't want to get an Instagram. I don't want to do a Snapchat. Uh, the naysayers have successfully driven me to a strict, political only social media feed. And it sucks. It sucks. I know a lot of people say suck it up, but it affects me nonetheless, whether it should or not, it does. And I'm not afraid to admit it. Maybe a little ashamed to admit it, but maybe not afraid to admit it.
I don't think there's anything wrong with having feelings. You know what I mean? I mean, it's gotta be a challenge. So again, how did this? You talked a little bit about when they first approached you with this concept of a docu-series that you were feeling like it was like an independent film. Kind of how to walk me through that process. How did it evolve from them initiating conversations to full on production mode? And at what point did you realize that it had gotten as to the point that it is?
Yeah, these guys were filming Joe even while he was running for governor still, before he went on the run and went to jail. That's how they have as much footage as they have that is theirs genuinely. Apart from the fact he sold all his footage to Netflix, obviously. But they had already been filming us for years. I would say probably about 2 years, off and on. And they all had our numbers because in order to participate, we had to sign a release. But like I said before, we were all told it was going to be a documentary on tigers in captivity, and the extinction of tigers, kind of those three basic pillars of subjects. And it didn't turn out that way at all. And you can even see interviews from the directors, Eric and Rebecca. And they even gave interviews to that effect, saying that, they started out as this is for the tigers, and then it went to Netflix and it became sensational. And I honestly did not know it was going to blow up until, or go to Netflix, until the day it really hit Netflix. And that's when I knew. I was like, oh my God, we're in a pandemic. And I just watched a little bit of it and decided on not watching it, but it looked compelling from the little bit that I watched. So I was afraid from there that it would blow up, and indeed it did.
Yeah. Just talk about the pandemic and the impact that it has on people's their engagement with media and those types of things. So more people are watching Netflix. Well, let's say COVID-19 didn't happen. Do you feel like the Tiger King would have gotten the attention that it did in a normal everything's fine society?
I mean, I don't really think so. I mean, surely it would have got plenty of attention because it's on Netflix. Anything that's on Netflix, people are going to watch. But I mean, you could even go look at the numbers, I guess, and some 25 at least we'll just be conservative and say at least, what was it, 25 million at least unemployed, and the viewership was something not far from that number itself. So it might not be a stretch of the imagination to say a large majority of these folks were people that might otherwise be working, but were stuck at home. I think that is a serious possibility. But just the nature of the way that they ended up at the end. people like a good gruesome tale. And with that scene that I happen to be in with Travis killing himself, and that video of that actual incident being on there, I have a hard time believing that Americans would have been able to help themselves with that kind of footage out there. I
Right.
think it probably would have eventually blew up, but maybe more of a crescendo than a spike.
Yeah, because it came on hard and fast. As far as one day I woke up and it was just there,
Yeah.
and it was everywhere. And like I said, I'm one of the few holdouts. Even my wife has watched it. She asked me before she watched the series. She asked me if I wanted to partake in that, and I said no, I'm good. And that was just a more of a peaceful resistance. Just to spite the internet people, you know what I mean? But now that I'm talking to you, and now the deeper I've gotten into this, it kind of sparks my curiosity. That doesn't say it's enough to get me to go after it, but I really appreciate getting your perspective on the whole scenario. So thank you for sharing all those things. I'd like to dial back a little bit. I used your last name in a sentence. You see what I did there?
Yeah.
Dial back a little bit and talk about the libertarian activism. And is that something you are continuing to do? Is that something you're currently actively doing? Is that something you foresee being able to continue being kind of a driving force in the Libertarian Party? Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I still very, very much hope to participate in the Libertarian Party. I am a dues paying member. I just got my new card in the mail today, actually. I don't want to run off screen, or otherwise I'd go get it. But I am not participating in convention this year. But I will definitely be back next year. And hopefully once, hopefully, I don't seek any kind of position or anything. But if I can bring anybody, even if it's just one person, to the Libertarian Party, then I'll call my mission a success. So, in the meantime, I like to look at stuff where we can kind of work with the other parties on. I know that's not hugely popular with internet libertarians, but at the end of the day, we have to work with folks. That's just the reality of it. No, that does not mean we have to compromise our principles, and that does not mean we have to give away the house. But it does not hurt to talk to the other side. And that's what I like to do, because Joe's fan base is an interesting group. It's equal parts now animal rights activists who see him as a hero, who are kind of on the leftist side of the spectrum. And you have got this huge President Trump right-wing following. And about 50% of my followers are either from the anti-Joe or pro-Joe following. So Democrats and Republicans about equal parts. And so, if I can bring liberty just to just a group of these people, I'll call it a success for sure.
Yeah, and that's a hard. I mean, you've been around the libertarian movement, and I'll just call it the movement, for lack of a better term. Whether it's been party politics or it's been moving the liberty needle in the right direction for some time. Tell me, I mean, do you feel like it's getting easier, or is it getting more difficult to have conversations with people about libertarian philosophies? I'm with you. As I like to cross the aisle, I like to have conversations with all sides, and I think if we're going to get anything done, we have to find common ground. Do you feel like that's gotten easier to have those conversations, or has it gotten more difficult here in our current times?
Yeah, I feel that talking about libertarianism is so much easier, just because of everything that has happened over the years. And I sent this in my bio, so I'll just kind of give a little bit of this to you guys. That was in my bio that I sent. I was a weird kid. When I was somewhere around the ages of 11 or 12, that's when September 11th happened. I'm 31. September 11th happened. And from that day on, I have watched the news and followed politics every single day. I have never been uninterested in politics. And over those years, I started out as a Republican. I moved to the Democratic Party. And then I was introduced to libertarianism for the first time in about 2007. But over those years, we had the Patriot Act. We had wars in Iraq, Iran. We went into Libya. Egypt. Shadow wars. Almost wars with so many different places. Just over the short time that I've been following politics since September 11th, 2001, we have lost so much. Even back then, you could make the argument that, oh, well, we already don't have any liberty. Even back then, people were already making that argument. But come on, people, we do still have liberty, and we need to hold on to it, because I have watched it slip away piece by piece of legislation, year by year, power grab by power grab. And, I think that I'm not the only person who has seen this. I can't be the only 31-year-old male in America that has noticed that, hey, you can't do what you used to do. You have a guy, Ross Ulbricht, I believe his name is, right? Founder of a website, and he's in prison. Ridiculous stuff. And this is all happening on our watch. And I think that it's getting easier to talk to people about it, because more and more people are waking up and realizing that you cannot do the same thing that you could do 10 years ago, and definitely not 20 years ago. And that's just a fact.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We got some more, another question rolled in. Myra's hitting us again here. Josh, she'd like to know where you see yourself in 5 years.
Well, if, I'd like to find a good job, like a good career. I have kind of struggled, and talking about this is kind of hard, but I have a hard time going to like an office setting, or any kind of setting where I have a desk, because of what happened to me. I'm hoping that me getting treatment is going to help. But to be honest with you, until everything's completely opened up and I can go to an in-person therapist, nothing's really gonna break through for me. There's no magic pill that's gonna just make me okay. And there probably never is going to be. So it's a challenge of finding something that I can do, and that I'm good at. Really good at thinking and coming up with unique ideas. I would like to do something where I'm using my actual mind and putting it to use. And that's the one thing I liked about Joe, working Joe's campaign, because I've always worked as managers, manager at Walmart, manager at a grocery store right now. But I've never, really reached for the stars. And I think I should do that. And I want to do that. And just kind of a little self-reflection here live on air, but I think I kind of need to look more inside myself to do that, and not worry about, what's going to come along in the next 5 years, but what am I going to aspire to do in the next 5 years? So thanks for the question, and sorry about the introspection there.
No, that's a great perspective, Josh. That's a great perspective. We got just a few minutes left here. I guess any closing thoughts for us today?
I just want to thank the Libertarian Party as a whole. This party is such an amazing group of people. We are fighting a battle that a lot of people, it's not that they are dumb. It's not that they're ignorant. It's just that their eyes have not been open to see that it's not right that I have to get a permit in New York to go stargazing, or a permit to go fishing in a pond that I built. There's everyday principles and liberties that may seem simple, but if we begin to talk to fellow people, and our fellow Americans, and point out everything that's been lost and everything else that we stand to lose. I really think that we can bring a lot of people to the Libertarian Party, and you don't have to be all doom and gloom to do that. You don't have to say, you know, oh, there's no hope at all. There is most certainly hope, and I would just hope that people not lose faith. I know a lot of people are disaffected right now because of Justin Amash's departure. I would say don't get disaffected. He's going to stay around, and even if he isn't, there will be even better for the future. I myself have had identity crisis once since I've been in the party. I thought I'd be smart and jump to another party for a couple months. I deeply regret it. I feel like it was a waste of time. And you know, I would just caution you, you know, if you're one of those people watching right now, they're thinking, well, what's left for me in the Libertarian Party? I once said to my good friend Aaron Adams once long ago, while we were at convention, and there were some Facebook libertarians arguing about how the Libertarian Party is elitist. The Libertarian Party is the least of the elitist, at least elitist of all parties. Anyone can be a delegate. In the party that we're in the current system, anyone can be a delegate. Just go to state convention, ask to be a delegate. In some cases, you don't even have to do that. All you got to do is ask to be an alternate. And, you know, when someone doesn't show up, you're going to get picked. So it's super easy to be a delegate. And with that being said, it's super easy to go to national convention. And if you do not like something, you can go up there and make a goddamn motion or run for fucking office yourself. And I hate to be rough and hate to use that kind of language, but come on, people. We are libertarians. We are tough people. We don't just give up and go to the different parties because all our options are gone. You know, go to the national convention, make a motion where it belongs. To pull another Star Wars phrase loosely, run for office yourself. There are all kinds of people that are running for office, if nothing else, to make a statement. I talked earlier about Brian Ellison. He's running. And if you know, I'm not here to plug Brian Ellison, but, you know, he's running to make a statement. Run to make a statement. You know, you can do it. We need contrary views in this party. If everyone that does not agree with us leaves, all that leaves is an echo chamber. And we do not want that. We want multiple viewpoints. As long as we can all agree not to hurt people and not to take other people's stuff, I think we can all agree.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Josh, thank you so much for joining us for Taxation is Theft Fest 2020. We wish you nothing but luck and success in the future here. We want you to continue to grow and stay. I want you to stay strong, man. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll get through it. And with that, we'll go ahead and knock you down here. Not literally knock you down. But again, thank you, Josh. We'll see you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Joshua Dial joining us from Oklahoma. Man, we're all over the place with this Taxation is Theft Fest. I love it. I love it. Coming up next, at the top of the hour, we've got a sex work panel. Ladies and gentlemen, you're going to want to stay tuned for Norma Jean and Chase here are going to talk to us a little bit about sex work. And with that, I'll go ahead and put you on pause, and I'll see you real soon. Stay tuned for Dre. Dre's going to be coming up. You guys, I know she's got a fan club. Everybody tune in. Take care.